I think it is very likely they draft a running back, but they have a lot of holes as well. Like, that team is a mess.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks. I'm Jason, he's Vaz, and today we're going to go over the players that will be most directly affected by whether or not their respective team drafts a player at their position. So there are some players that if their player drafts their replacement, essentially, their draft stock, their value is going to plummet. However, there are some situations where we could expect teams to be drafting replacement for certain players, and if they don't, their stock will absolutely rocket. So we're going to go over some of these, as well as perhaps the likeliness, because in some situations, it's just very obvious that that's going to happen. It might not even be worth mentioning some situations at all. But Vaz, this is going to be a fun exercise, and in some situations, you know, you could really hit a gold mine because with some of these guys, their stock is going to absolutely go up if you get them at the right time. And let's start off by looking at quarterbacks. I think the most obvious quarterback that could see rise would be Sam Darnold. Obviously, being the quarterback in Minnesota, they're expecting to draft someone, but what if they don't?
Right. So I think, like, right now, if you're drafting before the NFL draft, then you've got these draft picks that everybody wants, and we have to decide, like, do we want to use some of these like third round picks to go out and grab a Sam Darnold, you know? Because if the Vikings didn't draft a quarterback and they decided to roll with Sam Darnold, I mean, he's going to see a huge increase in value. But, you know, like you said, it's all about determining whether or not we think that the Vikings will use a pick on a quarterback. And I think the likelihood is they do. I would say that it's probably like, if I had to put a number to it, like 80%, 80% or more of a likelihood that they draft a quarterback. So it's not really a guy that I'm going out and buying right now. But as you said, if they didn't draft a quarterback, his value would skyrocket.
Yeah, I think I agree that it's very likely that they do draft a quarterback. And I think their desire to draft a quarterback is 100%. But sometimes another team jumps you in the draft, whatever, and you don't get the guy you want. And then you decide, well, do we want, our second or third guy that we wanted? Because there's guys that you absolutely can't get. Sometimes it can turn out that you don't get a quarterback or a guy at a particular position that you were planning to get. I'm sure they're going to have backup plans to that as well. But in the unlikely scenario that Minnesota doesn't draft a quarterback, then Sam Darnold is an obvious riser. Let's talk about another situation where we expect Denver to draft a quarterback, but it's again possible that they don't because they're not necessarily in the best position when it comes to draft capital.
Right. So, like, the Vikings have 2 first-round picks. So they have an easier opportunity to move around the draft board to get the quarterback they like. Whereas Denver, is stuck at pick 12, I believe pick 12, and they don't have that extra first-round pick to move up if they want to. So are they going to reach for like a Michael Penix or Bo Nix? Probably not. So then what happens if they're gone but before they pick in round 2? Like, at that point, are they going to move into the season with Jarrett Stidham as their quarterback? I mean, it doesn't sound sexy, but it's possible, right? It's possible. So right now, you could probably get Jarrett Stidham for next to nothing
as just an ad, maybe just a pickup.
Right. Because everybody expects Denver to go quarterback, as they probably will, or as they absolutely should, right? But there is a legitimate chance that they don't. So there is like at least a small percentage chance, if not like a larger percentage than, like, let's say larger than 20% chance that Jarrett Stidham is the week 1 starter in Denver.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, I think he's a good buy.
Yeah, I think if you're in a league where Stidham is available on the waiver wire and you do off-season waiver wires, if he's available, I say go and grab him. I'm not going to give anything up for him, but if he's a free ad for me, I would add him to my team just in case. Now, the next guy, I have actually put offers out to get one of these guys, and this is the Seattle Seahawks. And interestingly enough, for me, it's not Geno. because yes, Geno Smith has been the starting quarterback the last couple of seasons with the Seahawks, but the guy that I'm interested here is actually Sam Howell, because the Seahawks gave away draft capital to get him. It
Yep.
is possible that Seattle drafts a quarterback, but if they don't, I think Howell could be the heir apparent to Geno Smith.
Yeah, and you know what? They gave up pretty significant draft capital, right? They gave up a third and a fifth and got Sam Howell and a fourth and a sixth, which is pretty significant. He was drafted in the fifth round. So they gave up like a pretty significant amount of draft pick capital. So I kind of agree with you. I think they are hoping that he is the heir apparent. I think it's still possible that they do draft a quarterback if they like one. But I think after adding Sam Howell, I would say it's less likely that they do draft a quarterback. So I like this take in going out and getting Sam Howell. Everyone values rookie picks right now, and you and I are both in a draft in a league where we're drafting at the current moment, right before the NFL draft. And I'm noticing that I like third round picks in this current draft a lot less than I have in past drafts. So if you have a mid to late third round pick right now and you want to send it out for Sam Howell, I think that's a good idea.
Absolutely. I've sent out other offers as well for Howell in other leagues and stuff. But if you can get him, and I think the other point with Howell is, even if they were to draft a quarterback, let's say they got Penix, I think Geno would be the starter this year. But going into next year, I think Howell would have the opportunity to compete with Penix to become the starter after Geno is gone. So even if Seattle were to draft somebody, I still think Howell has a chance, because I don't think the job's going to be given to this incoming rookie as well. So I think there is
Right.
a little bit of safety in that.
And that is worst case, right?
Yeah,
That is
exactly.
worst case scenario.
Yeah. So look for Seattle, whether or not they draft a quarterback or not, because you will see. Or if they don't, go out and at that point, go after Howell, which could be sneaky because people know that Geno's starting this year.
Now, I can't do it for you. The inches we need are everywhere around us. What are you gonna do? Like! 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 Subscribe! 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 Subscribe!
One other quarterback situation we want to look at is the Las Vegas situation. They've got a couple of capable guys, kind of, but certainly not franchise guys.
Yeah, so I think they brought in Minshew to compete for the starting job if they can't get the quarterback that they want. They wanted to feel like they don't have to go quarterback, but they are very capable of still going quarterback. I would say this is probably around a 50-50 if they draft a quarterback or not. So it's weird. It's a weird one because like right now, people probably expect that Minshew is likely the starter, or at least has a 50% chance to be the starter. So this is a big one that where he could rise in value or just like plummet in value post NFL draft.
Yeah, it certainly depends on who they draft as the quarterback. I mean, if they're getting like Rattler on day
Nah.
3 or something, then it might not be a big deal. But if they surprise everyone and jump up to get one of the big 3, or maybe McCarthy or something like that, yeah, we could certainly see a lot of value change. Let's take a look at a couple more guys. Actually, I want to talk about
Yeah.
Daniel Jones in New York a little bit, as well as Jacoby Brissett with the Patriots.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Jacoby Brissett, let's do that first. I think like everyone expects New England to go quarterback, and it's very, very likely they do. But I think there's like a chance, even if it's just like a 10% chance that they trade out of number 3 or select Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3. And if that were to happen, because they do have like a lot of holes on their roster, they're not a quarterback away. So I think it is possible that they go elsewhere than quarterback at number 3 overall. And in that case, Jacoby Brissett, who finished the season really strong last year and and has played as a starting quarterback before, so is capable of starting in the NFL, would see a huge rise in value because everybody expects New England to go quarterback. So if you can get him cheap, maybe for like a 4th round pick right now, I say do it. And
Yeah,
then
once again, if he's available on the waiver wire, go grab him just in case.
correct. And then Daniel Jones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Daniel Jones, I think like, he's going to be given one more chance this season, I expect, because they owe him a ton of money. And money speaks volumes. But I'm concerned. I don't think he's the real deal, and I think the Giants are probably at the point too where they suspect that they made a mistake giving him all that money. So he's one that could see a dramatic fall in value if the Giants were to go quarterback in the first or second round.
Absolutely. So keep a watch on that, or, think about how risk adverse you are if you have him, if you want to consider trading him or not. Let's take a look at the running back position and some likely scenarios where we can see some drop or rise in value. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. The most obvious one is the Dallas Cowboys. But we all know that Dallas is going to draft a quarterback. They are going to draft a running back. So let's make that a moot point. Okay, so if you've got Dowdle in Dallas, his value is going to go down no matter what. It's not like he's going to be their starting guy. So
no, Dowdle could get cut.
Yeah,
he could not even make the 53-man roster.
So let's get that out of the way. But let's talk about some more obvious scenarios that could happen, but it might not. I think the first one that comes to mind for me is the Chargers. They've got Gus Edwards and Kelly there. If they draft someone early, then those guys could see their values drop. But at the same time, if they don't draft anyone at all, then they're going up.
Right. So, and Harbaugh likes to pound the rock, as you've said to me previously, right? So,
yeah.
Right now, Gus is capable of putting up big yardage totals if he's the lead back. But I don't think he's that guy. So I do expect him to go running back. I think everybody's concerned that Gus probably isn't going to be the guy long term. So his value is not very high right now. You could probably get him for like an early third round pick. And if the Chargers don't go running back, because they do have a lot of holes, if they don't go running back, his value could dramatically increase post NFL draft. So he's probably a good buy.
Yeah. What do you think are the chances that the Chargers take a running back in day 2?
So I think almost impossible that they take him at the beginning of round 2 in the NFL draft, because there's no running back that's worth that pick. So I'd be looking at early round 3, right? If they took a running back early round 3, they'd probably supplant Gus, or be like the 1A, 1B situation with Gus. So you really only have to dodge maybe one pick at the beginning of round 3, maybe at the beginning of round 4 as well. And I think there's a very strong chance they don't go running back, especially because these days NFL teams don't really value the position, and they have Joshua Kelly, they have Isaiah Spiller. Maybe they see more out of these guys than we do. We haven't seen much at this point, but maybe they believe in them a little bit more than we do. Who knows? So it's possible they feel confident in Gus Edwards and Joshua Kelly, and they want to give them a run this season. So I don't know. Possibility wise, I think it's like, if they go running back in round 3 or 4, is probably about a 50-50, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll see what happens with that. Another place that they clearly could, maybe should, draft a running back, not a great landing spot, unfortunately, is the New York Giants. And Singletary there is the guy that could see his value rise if they don't draft someone, but I think there's a good chance they do.
I do as well, especially because I think it is very likely they draft a running back, but they have a lot of holes as well. Like, that team is a mess. So it's possible they don't. And Singletary's the bell cow back, for a very bad team. But so I think Singletary has a lot to gain here, because he's not valued very high right now. We had Corey come on in the previous episode and list him as a top buy. Right. And I didn't love that at all, because I don't like the player, and they could go running back. But if they did avoid taking a running back in the NFL draft, his value would increase. That being said, if they do draft a running back, his value will go down.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the landing spot that we want to see, perhaps, is the Kansas City Chiefs. It seems like every season, we're hoping, I hope, the Chiefs draft somebody, and they've got Pacheco right now. He's done well. I mean, he looks good. So I don't know that they necessarily need a running back, but if they were to take one, his value would certainly go down, and somebody would be happy.
Yeah, Pacheco has looked good. So I don't really expect them to go running back. And even if they did, I don't think they would jump Pacheco on the depth chart. They
Yeah.
also just re-signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be the number two, who's a I think a capable number two. Uh, I think what they really need is a pass catching back, like a Jerick McKinnon, who they didn't re-sign. So I think that's what they need. So I think you could probably expect Kansas City to draft like a receiving running back in like round 5 or something. And I don't know that that hurts Pacheco particularly. So if they were to draft a running back in round like 3, yeah, that could be damaging to Pacheco. But if I were a betting man, I would say the likelihood that they draft a running back is high, but it's in the later rounds and it's a receiving back. That would be my guess.
All right, and of course, KC they need receivers, so probably unlikely that they switch to running backs as an early need. Here's an interesting one. What do you think about the Panthers with Hubbard
Yeah.
and Sanders, who they spent some money on last season?
Yeah, but he did not perform, and Hubbard is not that talented either. I think very another this one probably a little bit similar to the Giants. I think they could go running back in round 3 or round 4, and I think that would be unlike Singletary, it would be detrimental to Hubbard because I think if they took a running back in round 3 or round 4, they would immediately be a threat to starting duties. Because I don't think Hubbard is that particularly talented, or like if Hubbard did start the season as the lead back, probably like by mid-season he could be supplanted. So I think Hubbard has more to lose than Singletary does is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals a little bit. They've got James Conner there as well as Michael Carter. And Connor, he's been productive. I mean, he's an older guy for a running back. And,
Yeah.
I know he's kind of down on fantasy owners as well, but I actually still like him,
Yeah, he looked good
even
last
if
year.
they were to draft a running back, because I think he's still going to start. I just don't see them spending a high pick on a running back to supplant him. But I think whoever they do draft could take over the year after. But I
Yeah.
think, either way, Connor's sort of seen as like a one season guy.
Yeah, you don't have any pushback from me here. I agree with you. I think Connor's role is probably at least to start the season he's very firm at the lead back in Arizona, probably like the bell cow back for Arizona. Yeah, I agree with you. If they drafted somebody in like round 3, it would be to spell him year 1 and take over year 2,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think.
So like even if Arizona were to draft a running back, I'm not worried as a Connor owner. The one thing that I would say is I would be worried as a Michael Carter owner. Now,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Michael Carter's not going to be like the savior to anything anyways. It's not like you're hoping like quads come out for poker. It's a long shot, but at the same time, I think if they do draft someone, that's the greater concern as compared to James Conner. Let's talk a little bit about Buffalo and Cook.
Okay, so Buffalo has a lot of holes, and I don't know that running back is one of them, but I think they could go running back. I don't think Cook is threatened in his primary duties as the lead back, but he could easily turn into a timeshare if they draft a running back in round 3 or 4. So I would be worried about that because I don't think Cook is like uh, a workhorse running back. He doesn't have the size to stay healthy for a full season. So I think it's possible they draft a running back, and he could see a bit of a decline in value if they do. That's
And
the way I see it.
one more team I want to talk about is White with Tampa Bay. How likely are they to bring someone in, and how worried would you be as his owner if they did?
I think this one is probably a little bit similar to the Arizona Cardinals in that if they bring somebody in, I'm not super worried. I think he proved last year he's talented and that he's going to be the lead back this season, and he's still on his rookie contract. So unlike James Conner in Arizona, I think he's the likely to be the lead back again the season after as well. I don't think there's anybody in this class other than Brooks and Benson and maybe like Wright Corum who threaten anybody in terms of starting positions in the NFL this year. So if you can avoid one of those top 4 guys, then you're okay.
Sounds good. Let's take a look at receivers, and we're looking at both tight ends as well as wide receivers. So pass catchers in the receiving rooms. And let's start off with Baltimore because they've got some depth issues. And let's say maybe who would suffer the most if they brought in a pass catcher in Baltimore?
Okay, good question. So last year, right now, if you look at their depth chart, Rashad Bateman is number 2 on the depth chart. And last year, he only had like 300 receiving yards. They lost Odell Beckham, so he's become like the number 2 on the depth chart just as a side effect of losing Odell Beckham. He hasn't earned anything, is what I'm saying. And I think they are very likely to bring in a receiver. And if they take a receiver in round 2, which I think is very, very, very likely, I think Rashad Bateman quickly becomes the number 3 on the depth chart. So I think Rashad Bateman has the most to lose there.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Denver as, they've got a little bit of a hole there as Judy is gone. So no Judy could mean more targets for Mims, but that's only if they don't bring somebody else in, right?
Yeah, so I think their receiver core is pretty weak. They lost Judy, and I don't think they were particularly strong before they lost Judy with only Sutton and Mims, right? So I think they need like a number 1 receiver there. They need a number 1 receiver, and I'm not sure if it's going to be a receiver, if it's going to be like Brock Bowers. It could be Brock Bowers, but if they bring in a pass catcher, it's going to hurt these 2 receivers. And I think a guy like Mims, who's the number 2 right now, could even be hurt if they brought in a receiver in round 2, right? Or even round 3, because this is a very deep receiver class. So if I had to pick somebody who could be hurt most in the NFL draft, it would be Mims.
Okay. We're not going to talk about the Chargers or the Cardinals because I think it's pretty obvious that they're going to bring in a top receiver. So those are obvious. Let's talk a little bit about Detroit, however, because, Amon-Ra St. Brown, but what do they got behind him?
I will mention though, I think it is possible that those teams that you mentioned, the Chargers and the Giants, draft offensive line because they have a lot of
not
holes
Giants,
on their roster.
Chargers and Cardinals.
Oh, Cardinals. Okay. I think it's possible the Giants draft offensive line. Likely they draft receiver, but I think it's possible they draft offensive line. But yeah, it's more likely they draft receiver because the receivers are so talented in this class. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was talking about Detroit behind
Okay.
Amon-Ra.
JMO is currently like the number 1 option out wide, right? And he hasn't proven anything to date. So I think his job is a bit vulnerable if they were to draft receiver in like round 2. So yeah, I think JMO has a lot to lose.
And speaking of teams that are weaker after their top guy, Indianapolis, of course, they've got Pittman there, but there are some people behind him that could have their workload affected.
Yeah, so Josh Downs would probably be the number 2 right now. He plays out of the slot, and he looked good at times last year, but he didn't stay healthy the whole season. I think it's very likely they bring in a receiver either in round 1 or round 2, or even a tight end, like if Bowers were to slip to 15, right? And if that happened, like if Bowers came, that takes so many targets away out of the middle of the field away from Downs. So I think Downs has quite a bit to lose if Indianapolis brings in a pass catcher.
All right. Our favorite team to talk about when it comes to pass catchers at draft time is always the Kansas City Chiefs. Everybody wants to take catches from Patrick Mahomes. Of course, Hollywood Brown was brought in. And we've got the whole issue with Rashee Rice, or Crashy Rice, as you like to call him. Also, Kelsey even being there. So is it possible that KC drafts a pass catcher? And if so, how much are these guys affected?
I think it's likely they draft a pass catcher. I think the question is, do they go there in round 1 or round 2? I think they were because Hollywood only got a 1-year contract. So they do need to address the position. And then, Crashy Rice is like in jail right now. So they have to address the position. They've got other needs on defense, but I think they're going to go receiver in either round 1 or round 2. And, both of Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown are going to take a hit because of that. They're going to bring in a top guy.
Yeah. And the other question mark with that is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, they've got Christian Kirk there, but behind him, Ingram, as an example, could lose targets as well.
And Gabe Davis as well. And I think even, Kirk, I think Kirk is more suited as like a wide receiver 2 than a true number 1. And I think they are in a prime position to take Brian Thomas Jr. I see Brian Thomas Jr. mocked there more than any other team. So I think if Brian Thomas Jr. goes there, I think he's almost immediately the wide receiver 1 on the depth chart, right? Not immediately, but by midseason he will be. He's more talented than Christian Kirk. So I think I think Kirk, Gabe Davis, Ingram all have something to lose. And I think the Jags are very likely to draft a top receiver.
All right. Any other ones that you want to talk about in specific? I know they're for the most part, this list, as mentioned, I mean, like teams like the Cardinals and the Chargers, it's obvious that they're gonna bring in a top talented guys, most likely one of the big three. So, we know what's gonna happen there. There's, some other like little dinkety dinks here that might
Yeah.
lose positions, but I mean, how big of a threat were they in the first place? But anyone else that you want to talk about?
Yeah, we can't talk about everything or this video would go on forever. But one that I would like to mention is the New York Jets because I see Brock Bowers being mocked there quite a lot. And right now, like Ty Conklin is not much for fantasy, but if you play in like a two tight end league, like a two tight end league, Ty Conklin can be like a second tight end on your team or like a bye week replacement tight end on your team. So it has some value. And I think if they did draft Brock Bowers, then his value just dies instantly, right? Because he's not that talented. He's okay, but he's not overly talented. So that's one I'd be watching out for as a potential faller is Ty Conklin. And then I think if they draft Brock Bowers or a receiver at 10, other players on that team could fall in value like Mike Williams.
Okay, there you have it. Players that could see their stocks rise or fall because of what their teams do in the NFL draft. Of course, the draft is coming up very, very soon, and these are some important players. So a little bit of processing to do. See if you can go out and get some of these guys. Like I said, I'm very big on Sam Howell because I think if Seattle doesn't draft a quarterback, I think his stock will definitely rise. And even if they do, he's going to have an opportunity, I believe, to compete for the starting job next year, even though it's been clearly stated that he is strictly there to back up Geno Smith this season. So little tricky things like that can help you to win your fantasy football leagues. Vaz, any final words from you?
Yeah, I'll say I think we forgot one I'd like to mention quickly, and that's Cincy's running back situation. Did we talk about that?
No,
I'm not
Zach
sure we
Moss.
did. Yeah, Zach Moss. I think Zach Moss is one that I think Cincy could replace, but right now people are pretty high on him and thinking that he's going to like be the lead back next season. So but I am worried that they will replace him because I don't see him as a very talented player. And they didn't give him a lot of money. So that's one that if I have Zach Moss and I can get a second round pick for him, I'm selling him right now.
Okay. And once again, keep a watch on the draft to see whether or not they do draft somebody, because that will affect his stock, certainly. There you have it. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel as we continue to give you content on NFL fantasy football in the Dynasty format. He's Vaz. I'm Jason. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks.